okay, I was just kidding. We are in fact going to head over to experiment. So use git switch dash to head back over to experiment, and we're going to continue our experimental work. I'm going to add a new line to our experiment.txt, indicating that we have work in progress. Run git status just for good measure, and of course we have a modification in that file. All right, well, that was a good experiment. Let's head back over to our main branch. Oh, we're still here in experiment. We weren't able to move. What happened? Your local changes to the following files would be overwritten by checkout. Please commit your changes or stash them before you switch branches. The stash is what we're here to talk about. The stash is a way of hanging on to changes before we're ready to commit them. Easy usage, run git stash. Check that $sign on our indicator. That tells us that we have something in the stash. And it says saved working directory and the index state work in progress on experiment and add experiment.txt. These are now in the stash. The stash is a set of changes that have not yet been committed, but that we want to remove from the current working tree to allow us to move freely between branches. Git requires the working tree to be quote unquote clean, meaning no untracked, unstaged changes before moving around. Now we're free to switch between branches if we like. The stash indicator will remain. If we want to put the changes back, by the way, let's cat out experiment.txt to prove that it isn't there. And then if we run git stash pop, it will take the most recent entry in the stash and pop it off and reapply it. Sure enough, there's our work in progress line. Now, when we used stash originally, it created this work in progress on experiment message here, which is the default for the git stash. But we can give it a message ourselves, and we can explicitly say git stash push, and then provide the message, and then say not finished with this experiment. Now, if we run git stash list, you'll see that, first of all, we have our message. It tells us it's on the experiment branch, and it has an index of 0, which will become useful in a moment. Now, let's head over to main, and let's make some changes to file2.txt and make a new stash entry. We can have more than one. If we run git stash list, now you can see we have 2 entries in the stash, one on branch main, one on branch experiment. Now, I should mention, that doesn't prevent us from applying the experiment stash entry to the main branch, so just be aware of that. Let's head back over to our experiment. How are we going to get at the experiment stash if git stash pop is going to pull the top one, which is our main? Luckily, we have git stash pop, and we can provide it the index argument and get index 1 to get our correct stash entry. Let's add just one more change here to experiment.txt and make that commit. Finish the work in progress experiment. Now, we don't really need the other stash entry anymore. We were just playing around with it. So we can go ahead and run git stash drop, which will remove it entirely. And that is it for the stash. It's a really underutilized feature, but one that I use all the time for exactly this purpose, to move between branches easily, but hang on to work that I'm doing. The next session is really, really important. We're going to be talking about merging changes between branches. I'll see you there.